if you like chicken marsala, you go out to restaurants for that, you may not realize that the original dish was veal marsala. But people went to chicken when veal got very expensive, and I still prefer veal marsala, but I do make chicken marsala. And back in the day, there were some unscrupulous restaurants that, because the veal was expensive, would substitute pork but not tell people. So they'd serve it as veal marsala, but it was really a much less expensive cut of lean pork. I heard about that and thought, well, let me try that at home, and it's very good. It comes closer to the flavor of veal marsala than chicken does, and so you might want to try it. Now, you can cook this exactly the same way with chicken, and so the technique and the other ingredients are all exactly the same, whether you use chicken, veal, or pork. So do what you want. A lot of people use the white meat of the chicken for this. I prefer the thigh meat. Okay, so you can bone the thighs and make stock with the bones, and use the thigh meat. Let's get started with our prep. And so the first thing, the main ingredient, other than the pork, are mushrooms. Okay, and these are just traditionally you just use plain white button mushrooms. I like to mix it up. You can use whatever mushrooms you want. These are cremini mushrooms, which are really just young portobello mushrooms. So sometimes they're called baby bella. They're small portobello mushrooms. So you can use whatever mushroom you want, and they'll work just fine. So you begin by slicing the mushrooms, which means you want a nice sharp knife. So home my knife. And wipe that off. Okay, so you just want a nice slice mushroom. I wash these mushrooms ahead of time. Save these containers. They're great in the workshop for disposable paint buckets and what have you. And now we'll do the baby bellas. Okay. Next we need an onion. Okay. I like to slice the root off first, then the top. Then I look for the center of the onion and bisect that like that. And then they're easy to peel. peels out of the way. And I'm just going to do a coarse dice on this. So slicing radially and then 2 checks. Okay, so you want to slice the leaves, the petals of the onion are round, so you want to slice the radius. And then all the pieces will come apart real easily. Okay, so next we want to prepare our pork. So I've got my raw meat cutting board and our pork chops. Okay, this is $4.40 worth of pork chops. There's 3 center cut pork chops, nice and lean. Okay, excuse me while I let my dog out. Okay. And you want to trim any fat off of here. Okay. And we want to make scallopini out of these, okay, which are a small pounded cut of meat. So I'm going to cut each of these in half. This one is long, so I'll do thirds. Okay, and then you need something to pound the meat with. You're going to use the flat side. We're just going to pound them out thin so that they're tender and they cook. And the easiest way I found to do that is to get yourself a big zippy bag and put a little piece of meat inside there, and then just flatten it out. Now I'm not pounding on it real hard, I'm just letting the weight of the hammer do the work, and you can see the difference in the thickness. This is maybe now 1/4 of an inch thick versus a 1/2 an inch. Okay, so I'm just going to do the rest of these, and I'll speed up the video so you don't have to watch the whole thing here. The final bit of prep before we cook is getting the flour dredge ready. So that's, I don't know, maybe a scant 1/2 cup. So just enough flour to coat the cutlets, and the flour lets them brown nicely, but it also, with the cooking oil, forms a little bit of a roux that thickens the sauce. So So it's important. And I like to add some finely ground black pepper to this and just mix that up. Okay, so you can season as much or as little of that as you want to taste. You can see there's not a huge amount in there. Okay, it's time to cook. We want to set a sort of a medium flame. We don't want to cook these real hard and fast, and so we can let the pan warm up. I'm going to use extra virgin olive oil because we're not cooking hot. We can do that, and it'll add a lot more flavor. And you want a fair amount of oil for this. So we'll let that heat up, and we will get our meat and flour ready. You can tell when the oil's hot by how it moves in the pan. It gets thinner and waterier in consistency as it heats up. So you want to get that up to cooking temperature. And you're going to take the cutlet. Take the cutlet and dredge it in the flour. You want to get it completely coated, okay, so that each little scallopini is nice and covered with flour. And then shake it off and place it gently in the pan. I always do the outside of the pan first because the center of the pan is hotter. Okay, so the goal here is to get them just lightly browned. Okay, they will cook the rest of the way as a braise. Okay, so we just want to get a nice little bit of browning, and like I said, that flour and the oil will make a little bit of a roux to thicken the sauce when it cooks. And you want to watch the edges to see when they start to look browned. And that's when you'll know to turn them. And this one looks like it might be about ready. There. So that was just starting to brown a little bit. You don't want them dark. You want them That was maybe 3 or 4 minutes on the first side. And take this raw meat plate away. Get a fresh, clean plate. And that's browned on that side, so you can start pulling them out. Now we're going to put our onions in. Break those up. And the onions will release a little bit of water and deglaze the pan a little bit. And pick up some of that flavor from the browned flour. And again, we're not trying to brown these really brown. We're just trying to soften them up a little bit and infuse the oil with the flavor of the onion. Okay. Now, if you like your sauce a little thicker, at this point you can take some of the remaining flour and just gently sprinkle it over. Stir that in. Okay, now we put our cutlets back in. And cover everything up with the mushrooms. I like mushrooms, and this looks like a lot of mushrooms, but they cook down a lot. Okay, so we got our mushrooms in, and now comes the ingredient that this dish is named for, Marsala wine. Okay, so this is a local Finger Lakes Marsala. You want to get your Marsala from a liquor store. Don't use cooking wine from the grocery store because that has lots and lots of salt added, and it's usually a really crummy wine to begin with. So get yourself a good, I mean, this is not terribly expensive, but get yourself Marsala from your liquor store or wine store. If you can't find any Marsala, okay, Marsala is a sherry, so you can get a cream sherry, and that will work almost as well. So I like a lot of Marsala in here. And then I want to add some stock. Okay, if you're making veal Marsala, you'd use veal stock. I tend not to make pork stock. This is chicken stock, and that will work just fine. Obviously, if you're making chicken Marsala, chicken stock will work. So we've got that just about covered. Okay, gonna let it come to a boil while I let my dog in. Okay, so it's starting to boil. I'm going to turn it down to a simmer and cover it. So now we'll let that simmer for a half an hour to 45 minutes, that'll make the meat nice and tender and flavorful, and then it'll be ready. I like to serve this over angel hair pasta, but you can serve it over whatever kind of pasta you want, and some nice crusty bread to go along with it is also a good touch. So I'll see you when we're ready to serve this. Okay, it's time to cook the pasta and finish up this meal. So got my water boiling. I'm going to add a teaspoon of salt and about a half a pound of angel hair pasta. That should only take 3 or 4 minutes to cook because it's so thin. So we'll get that going. The only way to know when pasta is done is to taste it, and this is done. I like my pasta al dente, so move the camera, sorry about that. So there's our our pork marsala, I'm sorry. Some pasta. piece of bread, some fresh herbs, and there you go.